I have been past president of the chamber and a local business person. I'm just going to run through a couple details here. We have an hour and a half for this, and we'll just go with it as it comes to us as far as questions go. So good afternoon. Welcome to the Mayoral Forum for candidates for the mayor of County of Kings. My name is Jeremy Lutz. I'll be the moderator. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging we are Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We'd ask everyone to mute your microphones until you wish to speak. For the candidates, thank you for putting your names forward for this election. For the candidates, you'll each have 2 minutes for opening remarks, which we will go in alphabetical order. So we would begin with Shane Buchan, then Jenn Kang, then Peter Muttart. When questions are asked, you'll each have 1 minute to reply. We'll rotate through the order of questions, starting with Jen. So next, we'd start with Peter, following with Shane, and we'll continue this until all the questions have been asked. Then at the end, everybody will have 2 minutes for closing remarks. I've got 4 questions here in front of me that we'll go through. And then once we're through those 4, we'll do a time check and see how we're doing. If somebody has some questions, if we do have questions past that, what we'll do is open the floor. That turns into a little bit of chaos. Then we'll just pick one person. You can ask your question, then we would meet everybody, but we'll keep it fair. We're going to go to opening remarks, and Judy will keep time for us here. And when if we'll be gracious, but if it's a little long, we'll give you the heads up. And Judy has the power of mute available to her. So, all right. So we'll begin with Shane. Shane, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Shane Buchan, and I'm running to be your mayor. I'm 51 years old, and I've worked my whole life in my family business. My family business is Perry Rand Transportation Group, and we are located in Cambridge, Kings County since 1963. We are the Canadian's oldest Thomas bus dealer, and we sell Diamond buses as well, which are a medium-duty shuttle bus. As many of you know who work in the family business, you do all aspects of the job. I've done it from cleaning buses when I was a child to driving them, ordering them, and buying them. I'm also a dedicated Shriner. I have 15 years in the directorship of the Shrine in Halifax. Halifax serves Nova Scotian PEI, and it's referred to as a temple. And the head organization of the person is called a potentate. I've been potentate 3 times. I'm currently the potentate. And I'm the only one in the world that has risen to that level 3 times. If you're not aware of what Shriners do, we help kids get to better care for their hospitals. We also transport families with their children to our 21 hospitals in North America free of charge. And we also supply transportation for families in Nova Scotia PEI to the IWK. I like to help people, which makes me feel good and serves a purpose in society. That's why I want to be your mayor, to help people in Kings County to have a better way of life. I also feel our businesses need help as well. We have a real employment problem here. We can't find people to work in my business. We have been looking for people for years. I know Stop Transportation is looking for drivers and has been looking for drivers for many, many years. So I feel we have a real employment problem, and we need training to have people do that job, and jobs here. Every business, I think, is following that with COVID and everything. So that's me. Thank you.
Great. 1 minute, 56 seconds. Bang on. Thank you, Shane. Appreciate that. Jenn Kang, now over to you.
Hi, thank you. So A bit about myself. I've lived in Nova Scotia since 2010 and the Valley area since 2013. I've been interested in and involved in politics at the provincial, federal, and now municipal levels. Learning a lot, making mistakes, learning some more. It's a process. I've been able to be as involved in my community as I have been, thanks to having had jobs that provided me with a livable income as well as affordable housing without taking up all my free time. When I lived in various homes at large home fires and when I lived at Landmark East, room and board were part of my pay. I was able to use that free time to help organize local contra dances, join the board of directors of a community risks assessment group, help write a play that was performed locally, learn about restorative justice at a conference, take foster parent pride training, and adopt a palliative care dog. I've also lived on the flip side of that, working 60 hours a week minimum wage, having little energy or time for anything else besides grocery shopping, sleeping, connecting with some friends, and relaxing with television. I don't want politics to be reserved just for those who are retired or who have $500 to spare on signs and flyers. I want anyone who's passionate and interested to be able to pursue those interests and not need to spend all of their money and energy keeping themselves and their loved ones housed, clothed, and fed. My goal is to do everything possible to make life easier for those among us who have it the toughest, and to speak for those who do care, but aren't able to devote hours of their time to let us know. I'm thrilled this year that we have telephone and online voting, and I'm hoping that with the time reduced to mere minutes doable from nearly anywhere, that we see a substantial rise in the percentage of voters. I've been posting a lot online about why I think people should vote, and I hope that you share your ideas widely as well. We've got 24-hour-a-day voting currently until 7 p.m. on October the 15th. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Also in under 2 minutes. So, well done. Peter Muttart.
Thank you, Jeremy, and thanks for doing this. This is an important communication piece. Quickly about me, a little older perhaps than the other two candidates, not perhaps. I've been around, I was born in Kings County in this region. Apart from a couple of years away when I realized that this was the place to be and stay, I've worked here my entire life. My work life has spanned from working a mile underground in a gold mine to building the Aldershot School as a laborer. That dates me, you know how old that school is. And I've come up through the business-wise up through the Chamber of Commerce movement and the legal profession. So I was once the president of the Atlantic Provinces Chamber of Commerce. I was a director of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. I have a lifetime award from the local Chamber of Commerce. I'm acquainted with the needs of business. And to Shane's point, the need for labor and labor training. It's necessary that we have those things, so I can ditto a lot of what's already been said. But speaking for myself, I know that we have the assets within this area to generate that. NSCC is in the business of training up folks for jobs. All we have to do is communicate to them that that's the niche we need filled. And we have to parlay our assets, and we'll get into the question later about what our assets are. We have to parlay those assets into something that attracts businesses, but we have to first attract people who frequent small business, as well as attract larger business and show them why it is they should be here and establish for them the kind of asset infrastructure that's important to them. 4 minutes?
We're past 2 now, Peter.
I thought you were just going to give me another 2, Jeremy. Okay, thank you. Sorry to go over.
No problem. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much to all candidates. So we're going to move to questions that have been sent in to the chamber here, and just if there's anybody that has joined us a little late, and just as a refresher, so each candidate has 1 minute for a response, And we will start with where we started, opening remarks with Shane. Jen will take the question first, and then in succession. And at the end of this, everybody will have another 2 minutes for closing. So, first question. And so this is for Jen to start. Kings County made zone changes to protect farmland in the last couple of years. I want to know, this is from the person who sent the question. I want to know from the mayor and candidates whose districts include dike land, what they're going to do to protect dike land specifically. And in parentheses, they make a remark that they understand it, that may have some provincial overlap, but that's not a response that they would like to hear. So start with Jen.
Okay, firstly, I will say that that I learned a lot when I ran provincially about what is municipal, what is provincial, and what is federal, and I'm still learning that. So there is a lot of communication that needs to happen between those governments. Certainly, there's nothing that's isolated at one level. In terms of the dikelands in particular, there's a lot more that I need to learn, but we're seeing a lot of the protest over in Windsor about the waterways and about the shores, and it's certainly something that needs to be looked at. I appreciate the efforts of conservation societies, for example, for birds that put up educational signs asking people to keep their dogs leashed and to stay away from nesting habitats. So there's a lot to be done there. I think it's great that farmland is being protected. I have a lot of opinions about soil preservation, because if the soil is depleted, it becomes that much harder for anything to grow on it. So certainly zoning is something that I would look further into, and yeah, environment being a high priority. Protecting is more important than trying to repair something after the damage has happened. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Peter.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. So let's talk very quickly about protection of farmland. Kings County has perhaps the most protection for farmland of any municipality in Canada. But let's go to dike land, and that's as of September the 30th, because the exemptions that had previously existed continued until September the 30th and got shut down. So you might have seen a lot of construction over that short period of time. Let's talk about dike lands. The province of Nova Scotia, through the Department of Agriculture, Minister Caldwell has responsibility for dike lands. We as a municipality have a responsibility as well, but it's not financial. The province has specific monies allocated for the rebuilding of the dikes. One of the problems is, and I don't criticize people for this, but one of the problems is that if you have the most urgent situation and you make the most noise about it,
just listening.
Funds get moved from what was generally initially budgeted across the province into that one specific area, and then we're deficient in our provincial budget with which to address us. We in Kings County have over 3,000 acres of farmland protected by dikes. We must advocate for the protection of those.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. We're at time. And just ask anybody joining in if you could please hit mute as you join in. We have the opportunity to mute you, but for friendly dogs that would want some attention in the background, that would be great. Shane, now to you.
In 2013, when I ran for MLA, I had a great conversation with John Orr regarding this. John comes from Holland, and dikes are very important to John, and we've had quite a conversation about that. I wasn't aware that there were even a problem, and after the conversation, I started looking at the high tides and everything, and yeah, our dikes are desperately in need of repair. I certainly would work towards helping.
I know, and that's
federal government.
We have a little bit of ways, but
Yeah.
and we've talked about like Horton as well into that RD stream, but yeah.
really nice until the weather well.
Shane, sorry about that. Hi, somebody's
Kind of be-
not muted. There we go. Shane, I'm going to give you the floor back again. Apologies. Let's just hit reset on that. All right. Go ahead.
So the dikes are very important to this area. With the where a lot of the ground is under water if the dikes aren't taken care of. So I'm very much in favor of working with the provincial and the federal government to preserve them.
Okay. Thank you. This is fun, isn't it? Everybody's having fun. This is mute world. All right. So this question will now start with Peter Muttart, and this was an emailed question to the Chamber of Commerce. Are you in favor of a noise bylaw for all of Kings County?
Yeah, I wish it was so simple as to say yes. I am actually in favor of a noise bylaw. There's great difficulties associated with establishing what a noise is, what the level of noise is, and what areas of the county it applies to. If you have farm machinery operating all night during harvest season, if you have trucks backing up with their beepers going in industrial areas, if you, as opposed to having four-wheeler rallies in certain areas, the difficulty is establishing the limits of the regulation and enforcing it. But the answer was yes. You're on mute.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Shane, to you.
I respect what Mr. Muttart has just said regarding the hardness of enforcing it. I'm actually, I would be against a noise bylaw. I would like to see a case-by-case situation for enforcement. Certainly, peace of mind, enjoying of your property would be forthcoming on that. But I echo what Peter had said about backing up, equipment starting. I would hate to see a company be penalized for operating their business. So I would be definitely against that bylaw for noise. It would have to depend on actually what the bylaw stated and how it was, but I would hate to see people penalized. The county is a large open space, and I just don't want to start enforcing law on everybody, so I'd be against it.
Thank you, Shane. And Jen, to you.
Certainly, and the benefit of going last, I can sort of take the best of both worlds. I definitely agree the county is very large. Mayor Mchart and I actually had a neat conversation about dark sky reserves recently and about how people aren't necessarily aware of what impact they're having. In that case, it was light. In this case, it's noise on their neighboring communities. So a lot of people were lighting sheds or buildings and the light was going upwards where a simple cap could get it to go downwards. So there's a lot of discussion to be had about, whether the noise is equipment, whether the noise is roosters. If there's a set time at which, at 3 a.m. in a residential area, I think would be a fairly straightforward, ruling that that loud noise, and again, decibels needing to be decided on what's loud. But there are a lot of tools for that. Fireworks FX in the Gaspereau Valley has all of these neat labels on their fireworks about which ones are moderate or quiet or loud. So I do believe that with a community effort, we would be able to have rules that are clear enough to be easily understood and followed, but specific enough to cater to different situations.
Great. Thank you. Thanks to everybody. All right. So we're back at the, Shane, this question we'll start with you. Another email question into the chamber. Knowing that the 2020 tourism season could have been a complete wash if it had not been for the quick action of the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce, Would you be in favor of supporting the AVCC financially in their multimedia campaign for 2021? And if so, how can they access funding in January, February 2021 so that a campaign can be confirmed and ready to go by mid-May?
I would be supporting it financially. My business does deal with tourism. I run a bus company here. We've basically been shut down. I don't see that coming back. I don't believe all the advertising in the world is going to put people in large groups at this day and age. So I'm concerned with what kind of advertising online, stuff like that. But yeah, I'd be in favor of doing that for sure. How do you access those funds? We certainly would have to include it in the budget and go forward. So, thank you.
Great, thank you, Shane. Jen, to you now.
Certainly, yeah, in short, I would say yes. It's hard to say yes, not knowing all of the details. I've been looking through the county's budget, and of course, there's a lot there. There's about 160 pages with all sorts of neat charts and graphs. Absolutely, the Chamber has done a lot. I've attended talks and learned about people's experiences coming through. I think that advertising for businesses, a lot of information has gone out about people having staycations, supporting local, going to the restaurants for takeout, and especially people who have, for example, home-based businesses might not have a storefront right in the corridor. I think in general, you know, with the pandemic and without, that's something that I was interested in pursuing and having more visibility, and that's something that can be done in combination with the resources that the county has to advertise widely, as well as the Chamber of Commerce, the Valley Wren. There's a lot of great organizations that can help get the word out and support our businesses in these tough times.
Great, thank you, Jen. And Peter.
Yes, thank you for the question. It's important that we finance organizations such as the Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Regional Enterprise Network, even though, I say even though, partners within the regions of their encompassment are not participating in the funding. They still need the funding. They do an important job, and it benefits the entire region. If we have one partner, municipal partner, that can't afford perhaps to participate in that, that's all right. Because if we can, we should, in order to get the message out where it needs to go, that we're open for business, especially in the tourism area. And as you know, the Municipality of Kings came up with $100,000 of emergency funding for tourism advertisement just before the Atlantic bubble started, so that we could take advantage of that. So yes, we always have been. It becomes a question of timing. I think it's important that the timing of those funds moving out and the budgeting of the timing of those funds moving out are appropriate to the job that needs to be done.
Great, thank you. We have just a time check here. We're at 12:27. We've received a couple more questions by email, and rather than if you have a question you'd like to ask, it would be best if you just send it on the chat function, on the private chat function, to the account is Judy Rafew's account. And rather than just opening up the floor, which could be a little chaotic. So 12:30. Thank you, Peter. Next question, we start with Jen. We are in the middle of a pandemic and will be for years coming, and it will be years coming out of this. What are each candidate's plan on economic development for the next 4 years through the pandemic lens? And Jen, you're first in this case.
Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, a number of the things that have come up because of the pandemic or things that were issues even beforehand. Affordable housing for seniors, especially places where they can live either semi-independently or at the very least have their own space that isn't shared with other residents. So, so things like that, affordable housing has been a big thing that I've been talking about with people, and that's something that can be regulated or encouraged at the municipal level. I believe in requirements for physical accessibility. So if, for example, the ground floor of any new building that was built needed to be, wider doors, more accessible, then the upper levels could be, could be built in different ways. Definitely sustainable tourism. The climate is a huge problem, and it's not one or the other. Both the pandemic and the climate crisis are happening at the same time and need to be addressed for the sake of the future of everyone in the community. So sustainable tourism is another high point of that.
Okay, thank you. And Peter, to you.
Thank you. Jen and I agree on many things, and that's one of them. This municipality has set aside funds in a particular reserve to inspire economic recovery during the recovery period. We have to continue to husband our monies in such a way that we're able to assist in that response as time goes on with emergency funding. Now, we have senior levels of government that get their funding not from property tax dollars, but from income tax dollars. And so we provide people services, core services. We can't let our core services deteriorate. You have to have sewer, you have to have water, you have to have broadband, because that's like electricity now. And all of those things must be maintained. So in addition to maintaining those, to the extent that we can have money available for recovery, we're making sure that we've got that money, and we'll assist and we'll lobby other governments to make sure that the money is properly allocated amongst the businesses and people that require it in order to survive this recovery.
Thank you. And Shane, to you.
I've been one of those businesses that have been applying for a business aid loan since March. And I keep coming up with the same problems every time when they ask the question, when will your business be back to normal? Who knows the answer to when we'll be back to normal? But I completely agree with Peter. We have to support small businesses and businesses, but we also have to support our societies and our core principles to, as we do in our own households, to maintain our way of life through all this. So I would use those funds to, as Peter says, to keep the basics, keep running. So thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Another email question here, and we are receiving a few questions. That's great. Peter, this question starts with you. Why do you feel it necessary to spend $1 million on a new public works building when there are going to be lower revenues as a result of the pandemic? What alternatives are there? And we start with Peter.
Thank you. Well, currently there are no alternatives. We overstayed our lease in the municipal building itself after it had been sold, and the government, provincial government, wanted to take it over, which would have created and did create much additional, more additional revenue for the town of Kentville in terms of payment in lieu of tax dollars. The same thing applies. Our Public Works Department is still located on that property, and it must be moved. The question is, where does it move? And does it move into a building for which we can obtain assistance in the form of grant money in order to establish it as a net zero building and make it part of the green solution? So something has to be built for our public works people. So it needs to be efficient, it needs to be green, and it needs to be economical. So we're trying to work on those three legs of the stool.
Thank you. And we go to Shane.
it would be a business decision, just like a decision that I would make for my own company. What can I afford? What can I do? We looked at building a building in Dartmouth. It was going to be an extra cost for eco-friendly. We decided we couldn't afford it. I would look at all options. Is there a building that we can rent? What basic options are available before I spend $1 million, and basically what you get for your $1 million. I'd have to do a whole lot of research on that before I make a decisive decision. But yes, I would have to look at all options and make a business case for each. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Shane. And Jen.
So certainly it's a discussion that needs to be had regularly on when you do maintenance and when you build new. I've had the pleasure of visiting the new building a number of times, and there's a lot of neat functionality to it that I don't believe the old one had. There's partitions, and you can choose the size of the rooms, the lights dim and rise as you enter and leave. I would have to disagree with Mr. Buchan's statement that being eco-friendly is too expensive. I would love to look into more options for the ability to be a flagship. I was looking at that with my own residence with solar. There's a lot of discussion, but there's also a lot of hurdles that the average homeowner faces. So I've been looking further into those and looking at what can be done on a commercial and municipal level to have visible examples, whether it's of a small scale windmill, anaerobic capture, whatever can be done, especially if there are new startups eager to show what they can do and have a collaboration with them. The information Mayor Mchart shared about the Public Works building is great information as well, important considerations going forward.
Thank you, Jen. All right. All right, so we're going to go to now a couple questions that have been messaged in. And as of right now, we've got 3 questions remaining, and then we'll go to closing remarks. We're at, unless we have some more questions come in. This is a piggyback question then. How should, and we start here, we're back at the top with Shane on the alphabetical order. How should alternative energy play a part in the future of Kings County?
I think it's a very integral part of the way we are going to live. There's no question about it. I think it's very important to look at the options that are available. However, I also don't believe we need to bankrupt our children's future to go with the most expensive options. I like the idea of spending how you would spend at home. If you're going to put up some solar power, solar panels, how many electric cars are here, just all in moderation heading forward. I have been selling buses for 17 years. I have sold 2 electric buses in New Brunswick. They are not a feasible opportunity to do things as of yet. There's a lot of more technology that needs to be worked on before we just jump into the deep end. So I think all in moderation and what we can afford.
Thank you, Shane. Jen?
Certainly. So as mentioned briefly, I care a lot about ecotourism. I would love to do everything that we can to support, for example, there are glass igloos that allow you to see a view of the stars that don't cost a lot to maintain once they've been built and provide a real attraction. So supporting endeavors that people come to us with, the community grants program is excellent, but and the idea is that, people want to do these things. Schools want to do activities that help our climate. I would love for the county to be carbon negative, which I know is a huge endeavor. And as Mr. Buchan said, we can't go bankrupt, but a lot of these things are win-win-win in every direction. You're preserving the environment, you're not extracting resources unnecessarily, you're building equity, you're sharing a beacon, a flagship, as I mentioned, for the possibilities for others to take on. There are a lot of great examples to look at elsewhere, and small scale is possible in terms of wind, in terms of hydro, in terms of all of the different platforms, because it can be damaging on the large scale unintentionally.
Thank you, Jen. Great. Peter?
It's a very interesting question, and it would take a lot longer than you're going to give me to answer it fully, but very briefly, I've said from time and time again, we need alternative sources of income for municipalities. We cannot continue to rely on the property taxpayer's pocket because it's going to ever increase the cost of living in your own home. So what we need to do, and this will dovetail into your issue of alternative energies, we need to create wind and solar farms in order to create energy that we can sell into the grid. We can use the proceeds from that to fund such things as recreation. Summerside, Prince Edward Island funds its entire recreation budget, including that huge complex that it has there. And there's only 10,000 people in that city. They fund that from their wind and solar energy projects. We can do the same. So investment isn't a bad thing if the payback is there. Plus, it removes the issues of too much pressure on our carbon footprint.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. Okay. All right. We move to Jen. This question, we'll start with you. There's some more specifics here, but I just have to ask the general, kind of the question part. So this is a question about council and ethical practices and representation of in the community. So how would you maintain decorum and ethical behavior among council members to best serve citizens and maintain trust within the community?
Perfect. Thank you for that question. I've often said, so my background is in educational studies. I've often said that the House of Commons would benefit from a speaker that was also trained as a kindergarten teacher, because a lot of people at pretty high levels have forgotten how to be kind and compassionate and patient with one another. I've heard good things for the most part about councils throughout the municipality. And certainly I've participated in meetings with Robert's Rules of Order, with Green Rules of Order. I was on a 19-person bike trip. We cycled 80 kilometers a day and then would sit down to have long meetings that needed to be consensus-based before we could leave and make our supper. So there's a lot of experience that I've had on reaching decisions. I'm open-minded about changing my mind when new information comes in that's contrary. There's a lot of divisiveness in the world everywhere right now, and digging in our heels and saying my way or the highway is just not going to cut it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Peter.
Thank you for the question. It's really about respect and decorum at the council table. You have 10 people at the council table, 9 districts that are being represented by individuals whose one of their duties is to ensure that that district's concerns come before the council for the broader conversation and debate. During that debate, occasionally people will take advantage by directing comments specifically at other councillors and not being kind, as Jen says. That's not to be tolerated, and quite frankly, a chair of that body has to be strong enough and forceful enough and have enough respect from the people at the table that the chair can shut that down politely at first, and if it carries on, then perhaps a little less politely. But that's the job of a chair, to follow the rules of order and see that other councillors follow the rules of order as well. We've been very fortunate in the council that we've had this year. They've been extremely good in that respect. What happens outside council also applies. There are still councillors, they've still signed a code of conduct, and if they behave badly outside the council chamber, it still applies.
Thank you, Peter. And Shane.
Having the respect of the people that are serving the communities, you can certainly mitigate through any hard feelings or anything that's going on. I would expect the people that are elected, as Peter says, has the code of conduct. They're representing their people, but getting to know them individually prior to a situation, I'm sure Peter knew when he was getting into a touchy subject who was going to react to a certain way or whatever, and have that conversation before that you even start to have a problem. So that's how I handle it.
Okay, thank you, Shane. Appreciate that. We have a email question come in further on the Public Works building, and further to the question on the new Public Works building. Sorry, we're going to start, Peter, this starts with you. Further to the question on the new Public Works building, why would the municipal airport buildings not be able to be repurposed and made eco-friendly? Sorry, with Peter.
Sorry, the municipal airport buildings don't exist anymore. That land was, a portion of that land where the municipal airport was prior to my day, was sold to Michelin for an expansion which we all continue to hope will take place at some point in time, because we have great respect for that particular company. That the issue and the balance of the land has virtually all been sold off as a business park, and there are businesses in there and operating as we speak today. So there is no other location of which we are aware where we can put this, other than adjacent to our current administration building, which makes it very handy because you can interact between the offices that will be there and offices that will be here, and we can in fact create additional office space if we happen to outgrow this facility at any point in time. So it's of an advantage for it to be there, and I know you're going to hold your hand up, so I'll stop.
Okay, so although that building is, thank you, Peter, although that building is no longer available to us as an asset, to be fair, we'll give Shane and Jen some time on the floor as well to respond. Shane, over to you.
We built a building 2 years ago. It's shockingly what $1 million will build you today. I know people are astounded at a building costing $1 million. If you drive by our facility, our new body shop, to hit the scale at $1 million. I don't believe $1 million is completely outlandish for a repair shop and a public works building. But I would like to look at it, make sure that all the other options have been taken care of, and I'm sure that they've looked at other facilities and looked at all that options. I didn't realize that this was such a topic of discussion, but I've got several answers what I would do if I was to build a new building and stuff like that. So I'm just concerned that we spend the money wisely. So thank you.
Thank you, Shane. And Jen?
Certainly, so a lot's been answered. I'm glad that you went first, Peter, because I didn't know the state of those buildings. One thing that I've wanted since I moved to this area is to see more happening in the County Fair Mall, which I recognize is within New Minas. And just to speak to the fact that it is confusing for a lot of people, I had an acquaintance say that we may be the most heavily regulated area with the different towns of Wolfville, Kentville, Berwick, the village of New Minas, all of the different organizational levels. There's organization on the base as well. There's the reserve. There's the county as a whole, but when I see large storefronts and spaces, to see those used, whether for permanent things like public works or for things like pop-ups for businesses that wouldn't be able to afford them on a month-to-month lease, but that to say that I value a lot of looking at repurposing, looking at what's already there. In one of the other council's debates, they were discussing again, affordable housing for seniors, downsizing, which then creates more homes available, family homes for young families to move in. So what is happening? So for example, when something like Royal Bank moves out of the store in order to build a brand new store in the parking lot of their old store, so that people can drive through, is that serving us or is that just serving them? Thanks.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So that's right. This We will start this with Shane. This is, we've got one last question, then we've got a closing remarks. And I happen to be living in Greenwich. I like to remind my friends that it's the capital of the world. So come visit Greenwich. We're friendly. Okay, this is a broad one, and this will be our last question, and then closing remarks. Like, why don't we give 2 minutes for this question as well, because it's a broad one. So we'll give 2 minutes for this. Shane, we're back to start with you, and then we'll go to closing remarks. But we'll have a space between the end of this question and closing remarks. So, what do you think is the single biggest issue facing Kings County right now, and what will you do to address it? Starting with Shane.
That is a big question. I'd say it's a toss-up between roads and internet from people I've talked with. I do know there's a program for roads. I'd have to take a look at what that actually entails, a 15-year plan. I'm concerned with the level of roads as I'm a motorcycle rider. The roads that we travel on right now, to be a motorcycle rider is not a safe place to be. A lot of the time I spend is in Annapolis County. They have beautiful roads down there, and I'm not sure why we can't have the same type of roads here. And the internet, I know there's a program in place for that as well. However, families are needing it now, not down the road. I don't know what we can do to speed that up, but something's got to be done to have that done in a quicker pace. So that's all I have to say.
And Jen, to you.
Okay, so yeah, I've answered this question a few times for newspapers and different people that have asked, and it's not as simple as a single issue. One thing that encompasses a lot of the different issues is cost of living. So whether that's people feeling that their wages are too low, their rent is too high, the cost of childcare, the cost of caregivers to the home, all of those lumped together. And again, that's stuff that happens at the municipal level, the provincial level, the federal level, day to day for people. Certainly. So, a number of the things that we've touched on already, how to move forward with the climate in mind for the benefit of the community, and also for the surroundings, to treat them not as just a resource, but also a source of, tourism, of income, of health, for our community. So those are just a few of the things that I've touched on, and also our protective services and how they're serving us, and if that's the best possible way.
Great, thank you, Jen. Peter, to you.
Thank you. Yes, broad question. I think the speakers before me in a couple of particular areas have nailed it. It's about people. It's about the ability of people to live a lifestyle that's healthy and good for them. And it's about us enabling that to happen. As politicians, we are enablers. We don't just hand over the money. We lobby to ensure that certain things are in place that allow people to live the best lifestyle that they can in the place that they live. And I would venture to say, if you were to compare this municipality with any other municipality in the province of Nova Scotia, you'd agree with me when I say we're blessed. We are in a blessed area in terms of a place to live, a place to enjoy the environment. We can get to a shore community within minutes. We have volunteers that abound in this area. We continue to support those volunteers financially, because if we had to replace them with people who actually had to be paid to do the job, it would never get done to the extent that it's being done now. So lifestyle, jobs, security, green energy, those things all play in. Internet services. When we mention internet services, they're being rolled out as we speak. There are the East Links are rolling further out, the Bells are rolling further out, the cross countries are rolling further out, and the Municipality of Kings has just signed its contract in order to roll out its internet. Hopefully we'll have the wires strung before fall. It takes a long time. It takes other things. It takes payment of $20 a telephone pole for every pole you have to string the wire on an annual basis. It's not easy to do, but internet is like drinking water almost now. You've got to have internet services in order to have your community prosper and attract businesses.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, all candidates. So we're now into to closing remarks, and staying in the order of this, you'll have 2 minutes each for closing remarks. We're going to start with Jenn, and maybe just while everybody takes a breath for a second, I'm just going to steal the floor and sneak in a mental health note under the circumstances we're living under. You know, if you have a friend you haven't talked to in a while and you're wondering how they're doing, pick up the phone and just give them a call and just say hello. A lot of texting going on, a lot of emailing going on, but pick up the phone or go to the door and stand 6 feet away and make sure they know that you love them. And it's hard right now, so let's keep it positive. All right, thank you for the moment. So closing remarks, we've got 2 minutes. We go Jenn, Peter, and Shane. So Jenn, the floor is yours for 2 minutes. Closing remarks, go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeremy. I wanted to say thank you to you for moderating. Thank you to Judy for organizing and the ABCC, Annapolis Valley Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for mentioning mental health. One of my first trips into the Valley was to Kentville Psychiatric, so I know firsthand how important those services are. So it's really important to have visibility for those. If you've been watching this whole time or even just tuned in, I want to say thank you. And if you're watching, it means you're highly likely to vote or have voted. Thank you for that. And I hope that you'll take the slightly uncomfortable next steps to talk about voting with your friends, family members, neighbors. You don't necessarily have to talk about who you're voting for, but definitely grown-ups, talk to your young people about how you're choosing your vote, whether it's based on signs you've seen along the road, from reading newspaper articles, from knowing a candidate personally over the years. And young people, especially those who've been learning about government, thank you so much to the students, teachers, and organizations who've reached out and asked me questions. Young people, talk to the adults in your life about what matters to you, because it's your future also. And it's my hope that, as I mentioned with telephone and internet voting, that more people will do it, and that also yeah, if you need help, I know new technology can be uncomfortable for people, including myself. If you've done it by telephone, explain to other people how easy it is. If you need a computer and don't have one, you can actually access one at the municipal building. It's at 181 Coldbrook Village Park Drive in Coldbrook, for anyone who doesn't know. And it's important. We had a significantly low voter turnout. It would be amazing to have as much participation as possible. If you vote, it doesn't stop there either. To continue to be involved, to contact your representatives, to join organizations as you're able. And I mentioned at the beginning, you might not be able, but voting shouldn't take more than just a few minutes these days. And the people who may be the most comfortable waiting for in-person voting may also be at a higher risk of illness by going to the polls. We've thankfully had low case numbers, but still something to be aware of. We've got until the 15th at 7 p.m. to do voting electronically. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenn. Thank you, Jenn. Peter, to you for closing remarks.
Thank you, Jeremy. Well, I couldn't have packed that much in to mine, Jenn, so thank you very much for all of that. Ditto. I must say, some young people have actually reached out to me, and I've responded to them, and it's a delight for me to see that something's happening in the schools, because otherwise they wouldn't be reaching out. So I've been inspired by that, and I've answered their questions to the best of my ability. So we've come from a long way. In the last 4 years, we've come from a warden system to a mayor system. We have one less district than we had. A few years ago, we had 12 districts. Now we have 9. We've been 2 years in reorganization during this 4-year term, reorganizing the whole establishment of municipal government here in Kings. And we've been 2 years in major project development, much of which is still on the table, but 2 years along. what we need to do is see that that gets finished. We've got major projects in the hopper. So I'm asking you as voters for the opportunity to continue and complete and see those projects to completion, because they're going to make your municipality better, a better place to live, a better place to attract businesses who in turn look for employees, who in turn are able to move their communities back to the valley or to stay in the valley and not have to leave. These are important aspects to us, our families, and our way of life. As I said earlier on, we're blessed, but we have not leveraged the assets that we have here, the social assets, to the extent that they can be leveraged. We can be much stronger. We can be no more friendly than we are, because we're a very friendly community. And we're always accessible people. We want to become an accessible community. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And Shane, closing remarks for you.
Organizing a chance that we get an opportunity to get together and have this debate. It's been very difficult or different campaigning during COVID. So I do appreciate the opportunity to face my rivals, friendly rivals, as we go forward. I love Kings County. I've loved it from the day that we moved here in 1973. From traveling around the world, it's always home when you come down Avenport Mountain to see the valley, and I absolutely love being here. It's a family tradition to do your civic duty, as my father was warden for a number of years here, and I would love the opportunity to carry on with that family heritage. I ask for your support and your vote. And if you want to carry on the conversation, you can reach out to me on my Facebook or my phone number and carry on the conversation. So thank you very much and have a great day.
Thanks, Shane. So that does it. I'd like to thank all the candidates for your time and terrific answers. Maybe it's an unfair shot, but a little different than the debate we all might have seen a few nights ago on the television. So we're definitely Canadian. We are definitely Canadian. So there's a bright future here. Thank you also to the AVCC, Nyla. Judy's beside me, keeping me in line. I appreciate that. And thank you everybody for your time. And I think if you have anything else you'd like to run by Judy, feel free to send her a message. And that's all. Thanks from here.
Cheers. Blessed to have
Thank you,
three
everybody.
candidates.